Hello there, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. When Bill Burr popped up in The Mandalorian, it was a big surprise for me because, he's the kind of guy who's more likely to make fun of you for watching or liking Star Wars rather than appear in the show itself. It was just completely out of character for him.
So what you do is when you see people enjoying themselves or filled with any kind of glee,
anticipation of a wonderful day.
What do you like to do? You like to take that away from them.
I come in my X-Wing fighter to get into your world, and I take
my world.
Yeah, Bill Burr is literally doing strafing runs on fans with proton torpedoes and lasers so that we can calibrate our enthusiasm a little bit. And this is what Bill Burr does best, this middle-aged bald man with severe trauma and clear anger issues. There's nothing funnier than him ranting and just shitting on things, especially things that you love. He's just really good at it. It's weird. Maybe this is like a Northeast thing, but cynicism, barely being in control of your emotions is really how people communicate here. It's the weather, it's the traffic, it's living costs all rolled up into one thing. We might seem harsh and a little bit, on edge all the time, but I swear we're nice people, because we're all suffering. We get it. We know what's going on. And Bill Burr, he kind of really leans into this part of his personality. He knows his purpose.
I only did it when it came out, and I saw a long line of people looking like they were going to enjoy themselves, and I did my comedy job, was I made fun of them, and I tried to make them feel stupid. I do that all the time.
And he's kind of right, all things considered. We do need people like him. Comedians like Bill Burr use a type of confrontational, observational humor that is deeply rooted in honesty and challenges the audience when they least expect it. Yeah, when you go out to a comedy club, you're expecting to have a good time, have some drinks. It's a night out. It's not supposed to be heavy. You're not supposed to be talking about politics or thinking about philosophy, but a good comedian, and the good ones are all like this, they're all very smart. They'll just reframe things in ways you'll never expect, and it'll hit you hard. Many of Bill's more recent rants are just clever bits of social commentary and philosophy wrapped up into the authority of a working class man, or what used to be a working man. Now Bill Burr flies helicopters, and I'm sure he gets the top of his dome piece exfoliated every week. Nonetheless, he provides some truly interesting takes on things, like a younger George Carlin. Bill Burr is secretly making people think while they're laughing their asses off because of all the rants and complaints he has about the world. Who would have known that Bill Burr's style of humor and wisdom would be a perfect fit for a former Imperial marksman by the name of Migs Mayfeld. Migs Mayfeld. Sounds like a first baseman for the Sox, right? When we first meet Migs Mayfeld, he kind of just comes off as a criminal scumbag, super cynical, always looking to keep others very uncomfortable and off balance.
I wonder what you look like under there. Maybe he's a gungan. Is that why you so don't want to show your face?
This little fella.
Huh?
Bill Burr is acting exactly like how I would expect a former Imperial soldier would once he joins the criminal underworld, something that happened a lot after the Empire collapsed. These professional soldiers found work in the only profession where their skills were valuable: mercenary work. But here's the thing, there's a lot more to Migs Mayfeld than you think. Just like there's more to Bill Burr than his angry bald man shtick. He's also a ginger, actually. But more importantly, there's something that he is hiding about his past.
Yeah, well, Mayfeld, he's one of the best triggermen I've ever seen. Former Imperial sharpshooter.
That's not saying much.
I wasn't a stormtrooper, wise ass.
It's always the guy who smirks the most. It's always the guy who laughs at anyone who tries to do something with his life. It's always that cynical person who has the most trauma. Like a lot of Imperial Army troopers, Migs Mayfeld was never a fervent supporter of the Empire. He was just good with a long gun, and serving was a job. Something to do in a galaxy where other employment opportunities were probably not very easy to come by. And as such, I don't think the average Imperial Army trooper joined up to massacre women and children. Migs, unfortunately, was still in the Imperial Army in the last few years of the war, when things were exceptionally bad for both sides of the conflict, especially after the Emperor died. You take a look at some of the more troubling regimes in our world today, like Russia and Iran, and some people are saying that it might be a good idea to topple these regimes, and I'm not a big fan of either of these regimes, but when you collapse an authoritarian government that has basically snuck its tentacles into every part of the state and all the institutions, removing the head of that organization can cause some very terrifying things. The collapse of the Kremlin is especially terrifying because of the plethora of right-wing neo-Nazi groups that are surrounding the Kremlin, along with all the nuclear weapons that just are scattered across the country. You do not want that to fall into the hands of some rogue group of mercenaries like it's some 1980s action movie. The other problem that we see with the collapse of authoritarian regimes like Palpatine's empire is that Palpatine pretty much destroyed all of the institutions and power centers that could oppose him. This creates a true power vacuum upon his death, which was not immediately filled by a strong opposition, but filled by tens of thousands of ruthless and opportunistic Imperial officers who started seizing whatever resources they could get their hands on. Overnight, the largest military force in galactic history became 100 different raiding parties led by warlords who started carving up what's left of the Empire. That period of time would have been very chaotic for Mayfeld. It would have been really chaotic for most of the enlisted men. A lot of people didn't even know Palpatine died. I mean, some thought it was just a rumor. Now, Palpatine left one thing behind when he died, a contingency plan that is just hilariously evil. As if the Imperial state wasn't in bad enough of a state already. Palpatine in his last act sought to make sure that if the New Republic doesn't destroy the Empire, then he will. And so he had a contingency plan that included another plan called Operation Cinder. And this thing, oh, what a piece of work. This is a vindictive scorched earth policy that would make Stalin blush. It involved destroying as many planets as possible so that the New Republic can't get their hands on it. This included destroying heavily populated pro-Imperial worlds like Vardos. Migs Mayfeld's unit was unfortunately caught in one of those operations on a world known as Burning Cone. While engaging local defenders in street-to-street fighting, ISB General Valen Hess detonated several bombs beneath the city, which triggered a massive storm in the planet's tectonic plates, which resulted in not only earthquakes, but massive volcanic eruptions that flooded the entire planet with lava. There's an entire Imperial Army division fighting in the middle of all this, 10,000 men, most of them gone. Migs Mayfeld? Migs Mayfeld? Yes. I always call him May Migsfield. Sorry. But anyway, Migs Mayfeld was one of the only survivors of that incident. It's a rough thing to be a survivor like that. I don't know what Migs was like before that incident, but he definitely is not the same afterwards. This explains a lot of his behavior, the constant teasing, the meanness. It's not about the other person, it's about him. He's going through a lot. It's tough enough to serve as a combat soldier. It's tough enough to be one of the only survivors of such a calamity, but it's also tough to be a soldier on the losing side of the war. At least the rebels got some solace in the fact that they were on the right side and that their sacrifices, the sacrifices of their friends, had been worth it. The rebels were treated like heroes, but the imps, they're looked down on everywhere. It's kind of like being in Germany and Japan post-World War II. I mean, these are really rough places, very depressing places, and Germany had a huge rise in domestic violence. You have all these soldiers returning home dealing with all sorts of crazy things they had done in the war. And of course, in Japan, you had like massive suicide waves. Again, a lot of people dealing with what had happened and all the trauma of conflict and then losing the conflict, which is a really big deal because these were two very extreme and fanatic nations. I mean, the Japanese literally thought their emperor was God. And so losing the war is like getting smacked in the face and like waking up from, I don't know, like a 5-year meth-fueled binge. Well, actually, some Nazis were actually coming down from a 5-year meth-fueled binge. I imagine Migs Mayfeld had it just as bad, if not worse. When he saw him burning Cone, it was truly horrific, and it broke him. And this is why he has so much anger boiling up inside of him.
Get that blaster out of my face, Mando!
And now, after the war, where do we find him? Well, he's working in, honestly, one of the sketchiest groups of mercenaries I've ever seen. Like, all of these people are so chaotic, it makes me uncomfortable watching Din Djarin being surrounded by it. And these people aren't being like such hard asses because they like to do this. I feel like just in these circles, you have to be constantly on the attack. So people are focused on someone else and attacking someone else so that you are not being attacked. It's a terrible way to live, being like that. And honestly, a terrible group of people to do jobs with. Migs Mayfeld and his team ultimately tried to betray Mando in the middle of the job, which was just dumb. as if attacking a Republic prison barge isn't difficult enough. Migs Mayfeld ends up in a new Republic prison labor camp after the mission. Not all that different, honestly, from the one Jyn Erso was stuck in by the Empire. And thankfully, we catch up with him again in the second season. Din Djarin and his crew need an Imperial to help them break into a Imperial remnant base on Morak in hopes of finding the coordinates for Moff Gideon's light cruiser. The purveyor of Los Pollos Hermanos had the adorable little Go-Gurt in his custody, and Dadalorian needed to get his kids back before the New Republic Child Services got wind of the situation. Before Migs Mayfeld leaves the prison planet with his new crew, he kind of looks back at the scrapyard he was working in. It's almost as if he'd rather be there, It's not great work. It's probably tiring, but for a guy like him, maybe doing some hard labor isn't a bad thing. Now, when arriving on Morak, Din Djarin realizes that he needs to go into the base with Migs Mayfeld. This is because everyone else, because of past behavior and past jobs they have done, are in the Imperial records and will be spotted when scanned.
Fett?
Let's just say they might recognize my face.
Din Djarin is actually forced to modify his own code, which is to never take off his helmet in front of others. The modification he does is just not letting anyone else see his face. He ends up putting an Imperial Army trooper uniform on with a helmet.
Look at this. Oh, the shame. Now that right there is worth the price of admission.
Mayfeld is just constantly on Din Djarin's case about his whole armor and helmet rule, and it's not just because he's a smartass. I actually get him here. I understand why he's doing this, because I do this sometimes too. And it's not great. I think Migs is just uncomfortable around people he doesn't understand. People who hold weird ideological beliefs that aren't universally rational to him. This honestly just happens to you when you see enough people blindly follow something and do something really dumb or hurtful or hurt themselves. You just get wary of people who aren't rational and who aren't able to think for themselves. This is something Bill Burr would have seen a lot, I think, in the Imperial Army. And as the two are going on this mission and driving, they pass this small little village, and Bill Burr almost has this, Migs Mayfeld almost has this, flashback a little bit.
Yeah, Empire, New Republic. It's all the same to these people. Invaders on their land is all we are.
There is some truth to what he's saying here. But people like Migs, people like Bill Burr, they hide their pain through laughter and cynicism. It's a way for them to protect themselves, to not be vulnerable.
I'm just saying, somewhere, someone in this galaxy is ruling and others are being ruled. I mean, look at your race. Do you really think all those people that died in wars fought by Mandalorians actually had a choice? So how are they any different than the Empire?
I'm not surprised that Migs knows his history. Despite his kind of rough words and plain language, this guy is clearly very intelligent, very sharp, and he's being nice about the Mandalorians, honestly. They're in many ways much worse than the Empire, which is why they collapsed in the first place. They were just too violent and brutal, especially during the Crusade period.
Look, if you were born on Mandalore, you believe one thing. If you're born on Alderaan, you believe something else. But guess what? Neither one of them exist anymore.
I've definitely heard of that saying somewhere. I believe this was recycled. I remember many years ago, I think it was Christopher Hitchens or some other atheist, debating against religious people, which these are usually the dumbest conversations in my opinion, because why are we even debating these things? Let's let both sides be. But anyway, Hitchens actually had said something, I believe it was Hitchens, he said something along the lines of, you're not destined to worship anything. What determines what religion you're in is where you spawn in the world. If you spawn in Pakistan, you're going to be a Muslim. If you spawn in Mexico, you're going to be a Catholic. If you spawn in a developed country, where materialism is everything and, there's not much community building, you're going to become a burner probably. Why bother with this kind of stuff? Why say stuff like this? Well, this isn't just Migs Mayfeld. This is something that Bill Burr talks about a lot. This is very much Bill Burr. He loves calling out other people's hypocrisies, including Mando's. Now, you take a look at someone like Bill Burr, you might think he's a smartass, but actually, he's just really, really smart. He's super intelligent. He dumbs himself down a little bit, but you see him talking next to guys like Joe Rogan, and it's oh, okay. This guy is at a different level, And he understands that, his humor, his rants, his anger, all this acting out, this frustration, it's actually not really healthy for him to do this. He knows that he has, problems.
Hey, I'm just a realist. I'm a survivor, just like you.
Yeah, people who say stuff like that out loud usually are not very sure about themselves. That's why they have to say that out loud in such a definitive way. And that's why Migs is saying it, you know? Like, he wants this to be his image. He wants to seem tough. Like, none of this crazy stuff affected him. He can survive. He can be cynical. Migs Mayfeld has built this image of being tough, of being unaffected by everything in his life. And it's a lie. And people like Migs, you know, who can't properly deal with their emotions, like stock footage Steve over here, who didn't come from a broken family, well, they're really difficult to be around for a long time.
You and I are nothing alike.
I don't know. Seems to me like your rules start to change when you get desperate. I mean, look at you. You said you couldn't take your helmet off, and now you got a stormtrooper one on, so what's the rule? Is it that you can't take off your Mando helmet, or you can't show your face? Because there is a difference.
Migs has crossed the line a little bit here. At least he recognizes this, and so he like kind of tones it down a little bit.
Look, I'm just saying. We're all the same. Everybody's got their lines they don't cross until things get messy. As far as I'm concerned, if you can make it through your day and still sleep at night, you're doing better than most.
That last bit is definitely honest. I wouldn't be surprised if he has nightmares every night. Everything else about his behavior tells me that he is not well. Now, when the two make it to the Imperial facility, Migs leads them to an officer's mess where they can connect to the computer system. Unfortunately, he recognizes his former commanding officer, General Valen Hess, the wonderful individual who led the charge at Burr and Cone and killed a lot of men.
It's Valen Hess.
Who?
It's Valen Hess. I used to serve under him.
Will he recognize you?
I don't know.
The tough guy act drops immediately. He folds, and Migs Mayfeld cannot go into that room, and so Din Djarin has to. And to make matters worse, he has to take his helmet off to get scanned by the computer, and so he actually removes his helmet in front of his hated Imperial enemies. I think this surprised Migs Mayfeld a little bit. Or maybe it bothered him that Din Djarin had these rules but was able to get around them. But it's not just the hypocrisy that gets him here, okay? It's Din Djarin's willpower to do whatever he wants to recover little Gogurt. It's Din Djarin's fearlessness, his ability to move beyond such closely held beliefs. Here's a man willing to do anything, including betraying his religion, to save a life. What was it that Migs said earlier, right? Like, everyone has a line that they won't cross until it gets messy. I think when he said that line originally in the tank with Din, he was probably thinking about the things he did in the war, the horror he saw. But no, there's one line that Migs never crossed himself, and I think it was the line that he needed to cross so that he could in a healthy way deal with all the crazy things he's seen, right? Up until this point, he's just been holding everything off. He's been pretending like everything is fine. Even though, like, there are definitely cracks, he lets certain comments slide out that lets us know that he's thinking about his past, that he's not okay. Up until this point, Mayfeld has carried all the weight of this crazy incident with him just by himself, and he thinks he can cover all of his sorrow with a smart mouth. But in reality, like, these emotions, this trauma really does control his actions, his behavior, as we see when he refuses to go into that room with Valen Hess. I think watching Din Djarin go against his own religion to save Gogurt inspires Migs Mayfeld to finally do what he's been wanting to do for so long. Migs confronts his old commanding officer, who not only does not recognize him, but when Mayfeld mentions Burr and Cone, the general just glosses over the incident as if it were just another glorious battle for the Empire.
Everybody's got their lines they don't cross until things get messy.
To the Empire.
Now, immediately after, these two knuckleheads have to shoot their way out of the Imperial base, but when they finally have a second, look at what Migs does.
You did what you had to do. I never saw your face.
So yeah, I guess they both crossed their line here. They did the thing. I guess Migs isn't really that much of a realist or a survivor, because what he did was completely crazy and irrational. I guess there is, a little passion in him, a little ideology that isn't completely rational. Migs Mayfeld doesn't need to be a full-blown rebel or anything, but he also needs to understand that it's okay for him to not be okay. He suffered through all of this craziness. He was a victim, and it's okay to be a victim, as long as you don't let it define you. Migs Mayfeld doesn't have a lot of screen time, but his little character arc over the 2 seasons of The Mandalorian is brilliant. It's really a testament to Jon Favreau, who saw that this broken comedian would be the perfect individual to portray a broken Imperial soldier. And I guess now the only thing I'm waiting from Disney is that 1 hour special with Migs Mayfeld's stand-up, because I'm definitely watching that.